When it comes to that of any family of games, there will be some members that are easy and simple to engage with when playing, while others are beasts, and it takes a lot of knowledge and experience in order for the player to simply step up and play said game. So, in the beginning, when people are just getting into a new game, it's smart to learn the games found on the simpler side of the spectrum so that they can learn the basics as well as gain the needed experience in order to play in the deep end. So take this towel so that you can dry off the backsides of your ears because you're looking a little bit green there, buddy. Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming. With this series, we'll be looking at Mancala, which is a family of games that originates from Africa, possesses numerous variants to it, and is a turn-based board game where each player is to move their pieces across the board, relying upon strategy and tactics in order to win the game. And since it relies more on calculations than anything else, it might not be favored within a Vegas or Reno casino. With the origins of the name, it comes from the Arabic word nagala, which means to move something about, and it has existed for millennia. With the game's basic structure, it involves the sowing of counters across a series of small pits, which can also be known as wells, holes, or houses, found upon a flat surface with these markings possessing a variety of patterns, with the games found within the Mancala family possessing different ways by which the pieces are able to be captured and redistributed. It is also played between two players who are typically known as North and South. Although it is one of the oldest known games humanity has played, its exact origins and distribution aren't fully known. This is due in part to the fact that it came into existence before the invention of the written word. On top of this, the game boards consisted of nothing more than pits dug out in the ground with seeds, stones, shells, or other small objects found in the environment being used as game pieces. So even though this made it easier for people to transport the game, since the only thing they needed to carry was the game rules within their head, this would reduce the physical evidence of the game being left behind for future generations to come across. But it does represent some of the earliest manifestations of strategy games, with its earliest written reference being found within the 10th century Arab book Kitab al-Aghani, or Book of Songs, written by Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani. If you are a follower of this program and that book sounds familiar, it should. We referenced it back in our series on chess, particularly with the episode on Alquerque. Depending upon where the game was played, it would determine who would be playing it. With some societies, it was only played by the male members, particularly the elders. And though these given societies would play the game in public, it was never played with, or in the presence of, women and/or children. In these societies, women and children had their own simplified version of the game that they would be able to play. Conversely, other societies would have both men and women play together. Other societies would also see Mancala be used within the realm of politics, especially when a new leader is to be selected. Since this is a large family of games, we will only be looking at a handful of them here, at least at the given time. But with that said, we would like to eventually expand upon this given series at some point. Because of this, we would like to learn more about the other versions of the game that exist, so let us know which versions you'd like us to look at next, and we'll do what we can to include those in future episodes. And if you could provide us with either a link or a copy of the rules of the version you recommend, we would really appreciate it, and we'd be more inclined to cover it. The first version of the game that we'll be looking at is Oware, which is also known as Owari, and Wari, due to it being the version most familiar to us here in the United States, and it has its origins in West Africa. It is amongst the simplest of the Mancala games, and its objective is to have each player move the pieces in order to collect more of them than their opponent by the end of the game, with the player who captured the most pieces being deemed the winner, which is typically done by capturing 25 pieces or more. With that said, it is possible for both players to capture the same amount of pieces when the game comes to an end, which will see the game end in a draw. But the basic objective to end the game is to have one player clear all of the pits found on their side of the board, with any remaining pieces found on the other side being left uncounted and unclaimed, not unlike that of refugees, and the player who has the most amount of pieces is deemed the winner. With the game board, it consists of a total of 12 pits presented in a 2x6 pattern and is placed between the players. With the row that is found in front of either player, it is known as their region, with the opposite region belonging to the opponent. Some versions of the board also come with two larger wells, known as the stores, found on either end of the board as a means of storing the captured pieces, with the one found to the player's right belonging to them, while the one found to their left belonging to their opponent. And when sewing the pieces during the game, don't sew any into the stores. The game also uses a total of 48 pieces that are typically a single color and typically possess a diameter of 10 to 14 millimeters. As long as the pieces are roughly the same side, it should be fine. Since no player owns any set of pieces in and of themselves, there's no need to divide the pieces amongst the players at the start of the game. Whenever the seeds are owned, it's when they're located within a player's given region. At the start of the game, each pit is to possess 4 seeds, and if the board possesses 2 large wells, they're to remain empty. When it comes to moving the pieces, the south player will always go first, with movement alternating between the players during the course of the game. When determining who is going to be south, it can be done through a few means. First, it can be done through drawing. Second, one player places a seed into one of their closed fists and having the other player guessing which hand it is in. If correct, they are south. Otherwise, they're north. Third is through tournament regulations, and fourth is through some agreement between the players or the decision of the host. On the player's turn, they're to take all of the pieces found in any given pit found in their region and place them, one at a time, into each pit in a counterclockwise direction, including the pits of the opposing region. This process is known as sowing, and it will leave the initial pit empty. With that said, the player is not allowed to start from the opponent's region, only their given region. When sowing, the player is unable to jump over or otherwise skip any of the other pits, with each pit being able to receive only a single piece at a time, thus preventing 2 or more pieces from being immediately placed. During the game, enough pieces are able to accumulate within a single pit that it'll allow the player to engage in sowing around the board more than once. If this is to occur, they're to leave the initial pit empty at the end of the turn, essentially skipping it during play. This means that if the hole they selected possessed 12 or more pieces, they're not to sow a piece into the initial hole that they collected from. This, in turn, will cause the player to sow seeds into certain holes multiple times. It is also worth noting that at any time during the game, a player is able to count the seeds found in any given pit for purposes of planning their next move. If the last piece a player sows into an opponent's pit possesses 1 or 2 pieces, then the player is to capture them and place them, along with the piece they sowed into it, into their given store. So this will make the pit to possess exactly 2 or 3 seeds within it. But if the pit already possesses 3 or more pieces when the last piece is sown into it, then no capture is to occur. Once these seeds have been sown, said player's turn will end. With all of that said, if a pit sees capturing to occur, if the pit found immediately before the pit that experienced the capture also possesses 2 or 3 pieces in it, it too will be captured. This capturing chain will continue until the capturing player is unable to capture any more seeds in this aforementioned manner, thus creating a capturing row. When doing this, take into account that the capturing player can only capture seeds found within the opponent's region, never their own. And though a player isn't required to perform a capture during their move, if they do, they'll have to capture the seeds and put them into their given store. And it is worth noting that capturing can only occur in the opponent's region. From there, the next player will perform their sowing step by selecting one of their own pits and sowing seeds across the board. So this setup is in the form that won't possess a single extended turn. When collecting their pieces, the player can pull from any of their own pits that possess 1 or more seeds, with the condition that when making their move, their opponent will have to be able to perform a play. This means that the opposing player can't be left with all of their holes empty. Doing so would be classified as illegal, so a player will have to leave their opponent with a legal move whenever they are capable of doing so, but a move will only count as being illegal if a move is able to be performed. With all of that said, we'd like to take a look at what constitutes as being illegal within the game. An illegal move occurs when a move is made from the wrong side of the board, an empty pit is selected to start a turn, or sowing fails to give the opposing player seeds when necessary. And if a move is performed where it is only a single seed, then said seed is to be moved into the next hole. With the sowing of the pieces, if all of them are captured from the opponent's region, it is known as a grand slam, clean sweep, or grand coup, and this will typically end the game, causing all pieces that are found upon the board at the end of the player's turn being forfeit. It is worth noting that the rules governing the grand slam will vary widely, so we'll look at some of these variants here. First, the pieces can't be sowed so that a grand slam is to occur unless there is no other legal move available. Second, the pieces can be sown for a grand slam but no capture occurs. Third, the pieces can be sown for a grand slam but the last hole will be unable to be captured. Fourth, the pieces can be sown for a grand slam, but only the first hole will be able to be captured. And fifth, the pieces can be sown for a grand slam with all captures being possible with any remaining pieces found upon the board being awarded to the opponent. It is worth noting that the capturing player will be prevented from capturing all of the pieces found upon their opponent's region. If a player performs a move that would result in all of the pieces found in the opponent's region being captured, then said player will be unable to perform a capture. They can only engage in sowing and nothing else. This holds true even if a Grand Slam is to occur. If at any point during the game a player doesn't have any pieces found within their given region, then the opposing player will have to sow from a pit that will provide the initial player with pieces in order for them to continue playing the game. But if this isn't possible, then the game is to come to an end with the remaining pieces being given to the player who still possesses pieces within their region. And if the game reaches a point where neither player is able to engage in capturing, then the game comes to an end. So basically speaking, if the players are unable to perform a legal move, then the game is to end with each player capturing any remaining pieces found within their given region. With tournament play, there are some rules we'd like to take a look at. Once a game has been completed, it is necessary for the players to indicate the amount of points that they and their opponent have scored. And players are required to keep track of the score during a tournament. With the awarding of points, it is based upon if the player achieves a win, loss, or draw, where a victory awards 1 point, a loss awards no points, and a draw awards half a point. If playing in teams during a tournament, individual games will count toward team competition, where if both teammates win, they score 2 points. If one teammate wins and the other loses, they score 1 point. They score no points if both teammates lose, and they score no points with a draw. From our research, it appears that the Swiss system is the default form used, with the number of rounds being used being based upon the number of people participating in said tournament. Each game is to be 20 minutes long, with the check clock being used. Players should also inform the arbiter when they have less than 3 minutes left upon their clock. When it comes to that of defining a winner in individual events, the following method is used: the greatest amount of points a player has earned, the personal meeting, their progress coefficient, the Buchholz coefficient, and the Berger coefficient. But if a tie occurs in individual tournaments, the tiebreaker parameters consists of the following: the number of points they earned, the number of head-to-head results the players were involved in, the progress coefficient, the Buchholz coefficient, and the Berger coefficient. But if a tie occurs during team competition, then use the following to break the tie: the number of points each team has earned, the highest cumulated score from the games they lost, the progress coefficient, the Buchholz coefficient, and the Berger coefficient. With all of that said, different tournaments might implement different rules, so it's important to familiarize oneself with said tournament rules. So with that said, that is what you need to know about how to go about playing Oware. With that taken care of, we can start talking about how to go about playing Bao. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.